And so they'll kind of move between.
Talk about the fences. It's time to discuss operations and expenses. It's time, it's really time to elevate small businesses. It's time for Joe to drop his knowledge. It's relentless. This rhyme of mine is getting a bit ridiculous. So here we go. We're live with Joe. Enjoy the show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back. Joe Everett, the Fence Expert, coming to you live from FenceTech 2025, hosted by AFA. Hey, huge shout out to AFA. Great show, is off to a great start. Guys, if you watch the show at all, you automatically know exactly who I'm talking to. Mr. Vann Morris gave the keynote today. Van, I tell you what, one, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. You could have knocked the room down with a feather, I feel like. It was a great job.
Wow, it was an honor to be here, Joe. I tell you, I'm overwhelmed with gladness and joy right now. And it didn't start today, it happened yesterday. I showed up yesterday and there are some venues happening there. One in particular was the Veterans in Fence.
Yes.
There's so many initiatives out here with the AFA and including in the FenceTech to where I came in, heart was just filled with joy.
Well, I tell you what, from our point of view, love having you here. I mean, just one, like I said, the keynote. I'm looking around the room, the keynote, and everyone's on edge of the seat, dialed in. There weren't phones out. There weren't side conversations. So you had 100% of everyone's attention, and I think that speaks to the message.
Wow!
Right? How well it resonated with the room. In the message, as I understand it, or as we talked about, or you talked about, is being the best version of yourself. Right. I think that it can apply to anyone in this room or anyone watching at home.
Yeah, that's right. And that was the whole point there, is being the best version of yourself, which really means that you're not necessarily trying to be perfect.
Sure.
But if you fall down, you get up.
Right.
You know, right. And being the best version of yourself means that you recognize that you have room for improvement.
Of course.
You know?
Of course.
And it means that you understand that excellence is a moving target. Okay. So whatever you did this year to get first place in your company, that's not going to be good enough next year. You're going to have to do more. While you're taking your victory lap, competition is getting better.
You better start playing it.
You know, so I want to point those things out so that people don't get the wrong understanding about being the best version of yourself. It doesn't mean perfection. It means if you fall down, you get up.
Well, and I think that resonated with everyone. One point you made during the keynote also was being the best version of yourself as a parent.
Oh, yes.
As a parent, I could resonate with that. Is being the best version. I mean, you owe it to the kids to be the best version of yourself for them to show up.
Yes. And then as the story went along, and then you got to see my mother.
Yeah.
And when you saw her in action, if she had not been the best version of herself, you know I wouldn't be here doing this podcast right
Absolutely.
here today.
Absolutely. Very different trajectory in your life.
Oh, yes, indeed. So, yeah, it matters, not only to the industry that we're here now with, but also in your personal life, in your marriage.
Of course.
Like you said, with the children, all of that really matters.
Well, and like I said, it's a message everyone can resonate with because there's always room for improvement.
Right.
So success isn't a destination; it's the journey. Right.
Yes,
is another way of kind of saying that.
And it's funny that you should say that. I got a poem coming out.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it's going to be called "The Journey Along the Way." So which is more important? Is it the destination or is it the journey along the way? So yeah, so we're going to be talking about that. I've already spoken the poem once before, but I'm fine-tuning it again.
Course.
But it's like, okay, yeah, you're spot on, Joe, as
I
usual.
love it. The speech was so impactful. Your talk was so impactful because I feel like everyone was in the moment to hear it. And it's. I talk about this a lot on the show. Everything in its own time.
Right.
And your moment was this morning, and I tell you what, everyone. I mean, I walked out of there. Bobby says you walk out of the room just a little bit taller. And,
Okay,
and that's the truth. That's the truth. I about ran through the wall like the Kool-Aid man. I was inspired.
Man.
Inspired. But so that's the natural trait you have.
Yes, sir.
Is to be able to inspire.
Well, thank you very much. And that's one of the points that I want to make when I talk to people and when I talk to the veterans or the first responders, because you have to think about their families.
Of course.
Because you have to think about all that they go through on a daily. And some of these veterans and service members, they're leaving the military and they're not really given the full honors that they should be given. And this is the least I feel that we can do is honor those that serve. And like I said earlier, do your best to show honor. Why? Because that's how we roll in America. Is who we are, is part of our core values.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One aspect of the talk also was talking about the children, and from my seat, I could see how dedicated to getting the message to the children you are, just how dedicated you are to making sure they feel inspired.
Right. Let me say something about that. So when I talk to the kids, you have to understand that some of the kids, they don't have two parents.
Sure.
Some of them don't have one. Some of them are being raised by the grandparents, and the grandparent or two may not be fully aware of what the kid is doing. Yeah. So, and the reason why I bring this point up is because the story that you heard today was for that audience.
Sure. Yeah.
I can't go in and talk to the kids about how great my mother was because they would turn me off, because a lot of those kids don't have a mother.
Interesting.
Or father and so I have to be careful there. So I have to take another angle, but I have to be just as effective. And that is why I go into this description about the best friend and the best enemy. I ask the kids, I say, hey, how many of you know who your best friend are? And they raise their hand, about half the people. Okay, put your hands down. How many of you know who your worst enemy are? About half the people raise their hand. So I say, hey, I'm going to surprise you here. I know you're thinking that your best friend is either your girlfriend or your uncle or whoever. Now, your best friend is you, and your worst enemy is you. Same person. And I give them unrefutable information on how that is true. The teachers are listening. The students are listening. And I pin them into a corner, and they can't come out. And why do I do this? I do this because I don't want them to have any excuses. I don't want them to become an adult and say, well, my mama didn't do this, or my daddy didn't do this, or I didn't have a daddy, so I didn't do this.
Sure.
I'm not using the word self-accountability.
Okay.
But this is all about self-accountability. So I take the best friend, worst enemy approach, and I use that in a way that's really speaking to self-accountability.
Sure.
So my point here is the kids have to be spoken to in a way that's effective, that can reach the broadest audience, and also to be accepted by the school districts, the superintendents, because let's face it, we can't ignore the superintendents. No. In America, we have roughly about 180,000 school superintendents right here in America. And so we have to account for that and we have to account for the principals,
Yeah.
and they all have a role. And if we can hit that message just right, we can be effective. We can talk about patriotism. We can talk about honor. We can talk about integrity.
Yeah.
And we can do it all in a way that is palatable and digestible.
A way they can relate to.
And a way that they can relate to. And we can get invites back. And let me say this one thing about the superintendents.
Yeah.
They're very competitive. No school superintendent wants you to go into someone else's school district and start saying all these wonderful things and inspiring kids of another school district, not theirs.
Not theirs.
When a school superintendent finds out that somebody has a good deal, they want the good deal too. So that's part of my strategy.
Of course, of course. Well,
So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, Mr. Morris, when there's a slideshow that accompanied when you were talking, and it showed a lot of things. But one thing that I picked up on was that the schools that you speak this message at are all over the country. I mean, you're based out of Florida, Northwest Florida,
right?
But they were in the Carolinas. They were in California. They were on the West Coast, the Midwest, East Coast. You take the message coast to coast.
Coast to coast. Private and public.
Private and public.
So, and that's a real important thing to note. Some of the schools I go to, let's take a couple of private schools.
Sure.
They are pretty much squared away, but they need to be inspired. Those kids are still needing to be inspired and encouraged. Even one school I went to, college, the Naval Academy, they still needs to be inspired. So that's why they called me out there, hey, I need you to talk to the Naval Academy. But then you may have some inner city schools that have a graduation rate of 63%.
Oh.
Now, that's almost 40% of the kids not graduating.
Yeah.
Okay?
Wow.
So we have to be able to reach those students in those schools. And then we have to understand that, yes, things like illegal immigration, that's very important.
Yep.
And we're tussling with that now in America.
Sure.
It's very political, right?
Yeah.
But something that we're not talking about is all the 12th graders that's going to graduate here in 3 months, and they're going to descend upon this country, and they're going to be propped up by the government, and some of them are going to be propped up by their parents, and some of them are going to be independent.
Sure.
But we got a lot of high schoolers coming out, and to the tune of 4 million, okay, every year.
4 million.
It should be more.
Yeah, right.
But because there's so many kids that drop out between the 9th grade and the 12th grade, we're talking about over 1 million kids dropping out. So if you look at America, we have 30 million Americans that don't even have a high school diploma. No one would ever guess that.
Sure.
So
It's a
you see,
huge
Joe,
number.
we have to have a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
And during the political campaigns of not just the presidents, but the local officials, no one's really talking about the schools and the kids and how do we really codify a plan that really unifies the nation and remove the political stink that's on this subject.
Yep.
Certain things should not be politicized. Our children,
Right.
patriotism, law enforcement.
Well, because all of those things transcend politics, right?
That's right.
That's right. The children that we're impacting now will be the adults of the future. I mean, and that's cliche.
Absolutely.
Everyone says it, but they are our tomorrow.
They really are.
And what I'll tell you what, Van, I'm not super excited about our tomorrow,
Right.
Because of the statistics you're saying, right? We should be arming our kids with the tools they need to be independent and to be beneficial.
Right, and that's why I have a sense of urgency, because we're out of time. And I recognize that we're out of time, and these kids are gonna, like you said, we're not talking about far in the future, okay?
No.
And it reminds me of something. I was talking to someone about two airborne rangers that jumped out of an aircraft for a military display. It was a public display, and one of them had difficulty with his parachute, and at the last, moment there, he was able to open the reserve parachute. So the question is exactly how much time did he have to open up that parachute?
Yeah.
And the answer is he had the rest of his life.
Yeah.
He had the rest of his life.
That's right.
Sounds like a long time.
Until
But it's
it isn't.
not. He had to have a sense of urgency.
Of course.
Okay? And that's where we are today in America. We have the rest of our life to get this right. It sounds like a long time. Hey, the kids
Yeah.
are the people of tomorrow, the future. They're out
Yeah.
there. You have the rest of
Yeah.
your life to get this done. We're out of time, Joe.
Yeah, until you don't. Yeah.
We got to have a sense of urgency right now. So
course.
this podcast is going to be instrumental in getting the word out. And I
Absolutely.
want as many Americans as I can to get the word and understand what's going on here.
So, Vann, what would you say to parents that are watching now, either now or watching this recorded? What would you say to the parents about inspiring the children and tying this all back in, being the best version of themselves for the children?
Yes, I would say get off the sidelines.
Okay.
That's the first thing I would say. First and foremost, when I say get off the sidelines, I mean do not be a part of the problem, become a part of the solution. And not just for your kid or your child, or maybe you don't even have a kid, I don't know.
Sure.
But for your community. Get involved in what the schools are doing. Schools are out there, teachers in conservative districts and liberal, they're putting GoFundMe pages out there so that they can get supplies
Yeah.
for their classrooms.
Yeah.
If the parents just show just some involvement, of course showing up at the PTO meetings.
Of course.
Okay? You have to show up at any meeting where you're invited to. And the kids, getting them involved in extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
And talking to the kids. And listen, the most important thing of all, I think, is telling your child that you believe in them.
It's huge.
That's what has been missing. I mean, to you, you say, hey, no way. Of course I'm going to tell my child.
Yeah.
But the kids, like we talked about earlier today, the kids need to know that you believe in them.
Of course.
That's what happened to me, and you heard that story today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone spoke life into me. Where was I going before that? Probably nowhere.
No, we're good.
No, nowhere. And then those two gentlemen spent 20 minutes. So I want to say here to you and your listeners
Yeah.
that the story that I gave you earlier, where those two men came into my life and they spoke life into me, that was a 20-minute conversation, changed my life for the rest of my life, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, I am now speaking to schools. They're giving me 30 minutes. Now, you know that I believe that if I can be changed, I can have a paradigm shift in my mind in a 20-minute conversation. I know that I can go into a school with a 30-minute conversation and change the hearts and souls of some of those kids. I'm not going to reach them all,
Sure.
but
sure.
I will reach enough of them.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's really what I think the parents need to do is really get involved, get off the sidelines. And when you do that, the kids will appreciate it because they know that
Absolutely.
you care and that you're concerned about them. And they will be the better for it. So being the best version of yourself includes getting off the sidelines, get involved with the schools, and encouraging your kids and let them know that you believe in them.
Absolutely. And also by doing so, you're leading by example.
Yeah, you're leading by example.
You're showing them what it looks like to be active in
Yeah.
the solution.
Yeah, and sometimes it's as simple as showing the kid what right looks like. As simple as that. I know it's rudimentary, but it's not happening. And let me tell you specifically.
Okay.
During my Navy years, we would go into foreign ports. And when we would go into foreign ports, now we're grown adults. I mean, I was in my late 20s, 30s, and so was the rest of the crew. But you know what always happened when we went to a foreign port? We would have a safety brief. They would always tell us, hey guys, you need to be alert. Hey, you need to go in twos. Hey, you need not to do this. I need you guys not to come back drunk. If you feel you need to drink, you need to go and call your buddy, whatever. They would do that. Now, of course, as a grown man, do you not know these things?
Sure.
Of course you know these things. So why are we talking about it? We talk about it because just like the Bible says, faith comes by hearing and hearing and hearing. So sometimes you have to repeat and say again, repeat. And I know for certain, my wife, we've been married for 35 years, going on 36 here. I know good and well that I can't just tell her I love her one time. You better repeat that. You better repeat. You better do it again and say it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have to have positive reinforcement and repeat, hey, I believe in you. I know you can do this. That's what we need to do. Repeat that trust and that belief in our children.
I love that. I love that. Vann, as we start wrapping this up, we start landing the plane, obviously to roll back around, being the best version of yourself, show up for the kids and lead them by example by being involved and coming off the sideline. If someone were to want to hear more of your message, where could they do that at?
I would want them to go to healingamerica.com.
HealingAmerica.com.
HealingAmerica.com. And as always, they can always go to my name, EvangeloMorris.com. Either one of them, but to the message about the kids, that's HealingAmerica.com. And anything that anyone can do to help push this message along, because we don't want to charge the schools.
Right.
We want to remove all of the obstacles.
Absolutely.
Don't give a superintendent a reason to say no. Right. You follow me here?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and probably some of the districts that arguably need the message the most probably aren't in the position to make that message heard.
That's the point. That is exactly the point. You got all these, look at here, 5,000 people.
Yeah.
They can pay for this message.
Sure, yeah.
But can the inner city schools with a graduation rate of 63%?
Yeah.
No, they can't. So you're spot on.
Yeah, and if you were to choose, I mean, obviously, you want the message heard by everyone.
Right.
But I bet if you were to choose, you'd choose the children first.
I would choose the children first. And we're not the only one. Al-Qaeda's doing the same thing. They're starting at 3 years old. Okay, why can't we?
Of course.
So I'm so grateful, Joe, that some of the schools, some of the states are allowing me to talk to the pre-K students, the 4-year-olds, 5-year.
Yeah.
They're allowing that. I'm so grateful. So California is leading the way. And I want to say that on your podcast.
Yeah.
California is leading the way. I have talked to more students from California than any other state. I mean, they're a large state. But,
right? Of course.
But I want people to know that the healing is happening in the liberal and the conservative states both.
Well, because to reference something you said earlier, because it transcends politics.
It transcends politics.
The message is the message, regardless of what you believe in other things.
Absolutely.
The children are going to be important to us regardless who's in office and what politics are current. We're still going to depend on them.
Right.
At some point in our nation's history, we're going to rely on these children.
We're going to rely on. And I tell the kids, I tell them, you're going to be our next county commissioners. Mm-hmm. You're going to be our next police chiefs. You're going to be the next mayors.
Yeah.
And the next pastors.
Yeah.
And the next president.
Next president, absolutely.
You know?
It's got to come from somewhere.
So and they're looking around like, what did he say? I'm like, yeah, you're going to be, They needed it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very good. HealingAmerica.com.
HealingAmerica.com.
Guys, we'll drop that in the description below. If you guys haven't checked out Vann's message, you absolutely need to. We'll plug all the links in here for our previous message. Also, Vann's website himself. I went there first, so when I knew we scheduled our first interview, I went there to learn a little bit more. I was like, we need to do this interview now. Like, I don't need to. I watched it about a week ahead of time. Like, I don't need to wait a week. I want to hear this now.
Yes, indeed.
You will leave fired up, inspired.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast, and may God bless you, and may God's favor always be with you.
Vann, I appreciate that. If someone would like to reach out to you, how would they do that? Through the websites?
Me personally, they can go to evangelomorris.com.
Okay.
Everything's there. I have support there, and they can leave comments, or if they want to have a dialogue, we can do that too.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
So thank you so much.
Vann, first and foremost, thank you for your service. Secondly, I appreciate you coming here and being so widely available, not only in the keynote, but you've been here on the show floor since the keynote. You've been you've been here and been available. So I know that means a lot to a lot of people, and I want to tell you thank you.
My pleasure. God bless.
Thank you for your time. Guys, for now, Joe Evers, the fence expert, joined by Vann Morris. We'd like to wish you guys a great day, and also I'd like to remind you that good fences make good neighbors, and I'll catch you next time.